This is my presentation on police social work by me, Jessica Slabetsky. I'm going to talk about where police social workers are employed, the skills needed to be a police social worker, any policy issues, any issues surrounding diversity or social issues, and rewards and challenges of being a police social worker. Before we go into where they're employed, I wanted to give a little background to when they originated. So, the idea of a police social worker was introduced 100 years ago with Jane Addams making the distinction between juveniles and adults. And there has been some significant growth in the United States with efforts for police social workers, especially in Midwestern states where there's a significant amount of police departments. Often, police officers don't have time to do case management or resource allocation, and so a social worker in the police department really is helpful. Police social workers work on a meso level, working short term with people who interact with police, as well as police officers themselves, and impacting the criminal justice system as a whole. On average, it takes officers 2.5 hours to respond to mental health related calls, and many officers do not receive specialized training to address mental health or social issues. Police social workers are then the ones that normally respond with police officers, helping with crisis intervention in situations of domestic violence, substance abuse, homelessness, and more. They also may work at government agencies who interact with the police, such as the Department of Health and Human Services, some nonprofit organizations and community based programs which have to do with crime prevention, victim advocacy, conflict resolution, rehabilitation programs, and youth intervention. And lastly, the police departments have started making specialized units within agencies that focus on issues like human trafficking and 24-hour crisis lines for any of those needs handled by police social workers and officers. Social workers mainly receive referrals for family-related problems from the police, such as runaway behavior, vandalism, truancy, drug possession, theft, and parental requests for assistance with problems at home and in the neighborhood. And this offers police officers alternatives for dealing with mental health problems and to establish better relationships between law enforcement and the social services system. Therefore, there is a variety of skills that social workers need to be successful in this field. There are many skills needed to work in this setting, and these include crisis intervention skills, a holistic approach, case management skills, and meso intervention skills. Crisis intervention is very important, and there's a lot of high stress situations, and you need to be able to solve issues related to mental health crises, domestic violence, or substance abuse issues, and it's a lot at once. And then a holistic approach, a police social worker needs and is trained to see a client holistically, which allows for more of a person-centered language and humanization of clients that officers may not know how to use. So training officers as well as using those words is very important. And case management skills. There's a lot of case management involved in being a police social worker. And you are doing things like engagement, assessment, and intervention. And the key thing to this is the ability to use the meso intervention model because you are working with client specific needs. So you are operating at a micro level there, but then you are also supposed to be doing macro level intervention, such as communicating with police and agencies, as well as the education of police for mental health related things, as well as acquiring legal knowledge, gathering resources by communicating with other agencies, as well as policy work and fixing the criminal justice system as a whole. There are a few policy issues concerning police social work. firstly, the community policing strategies, training police to use evidence-based approaches to allow for crime prevention, relationship building, and addressing the conflicts between police officers and citizens. And this can also be benefited with trauma-informed care by officers, which social workers would need to teach officers. Second, a really important thing is rehabilitation and restorative justice programs. That is one big takeaway of being a social worker in these systems is developing policies that support rehabilitation and restorative justice programs for individuals involved in the criminal justice system, aiming to reduce recidivism and facilitate integration back into society. With the use of confidential case notes by social workers that are outside of the system, and even if this separate system exists, there are instances where police social workers can't provide detailed documentation because sometimes demographics aren't unknown, or depending on the encounter, it might be inappropriate for the PSW to inquire about client information. In this data collected by the Communities for Restorative Justice, they did a graph on satisfaction of restorative justice, and this is something that social workers would be looking at in order to determine services. There's a lot of issues with diversity and social issues in the field of police social work, and unfortunately, there is a lot of racial profiling and discrimination, and social workers will need to work within police departments and can advocate for policies and practices that control racial profiling and promote fair treatment for all individuals. And the use of force and police brutality is also a concern. Police social workers can support efforts to train officers in de-escalation techniques and nonviolent approaches to handling situations involving altercations. And lastly, criminal justice reform and accountability is a really big concern. It is the job of a police social worker to engage in police reform efforts, and social workers can aid in the rehabilitation/restorative justice that we talked about, addressing social issues and supporting reentry programs for individuals leaving the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, related to diversity, there is a lot of African American individuals who were threatened by police or were used or where the police officer used force. So that is something that you're coming into if you become a police social worker. Unfortunately, that comes with addressing our biases and knowing what biases social workers personally hold when working with a wide array and diverse populations and just not making assumptions. Really important is cultural competency. Social workers are held with a professional commitment to anti-racism and working with at-risk groups. And a lot of social workers now working in police agencies or just in general speak multiple languages, especially Spanish, and that is super beneficial for police agencies. As mentioned, there is a high rate of misconduct from police towards communities of color, and unfortunately, trust is something that is earned, and it makes sense that diverse communities can't trust police officers, but it is our job as social workers to help police officers and offer collaboration, engagement, and partnership with marginalized and diverse communities, and being able to even build trust on a smaller scale, which will aid to overall support between police officers and social workers alike. There are plenty of rewards and challenges, and a challenge is lack of resources, and it really is hard with a poor referral system and many unknowns, and having to work in such a small and underdeveloped field that just has gained popularity. As I've already talked about with accordance to policy issues, just the client data systems and the refusal of help by clients, and the respect to confidentiality, and also police distrust on a larger scale where police may not think that a social work approach is beneficial, and then any efforts of social work in the system are minimized, as well as just the idea of police for clients in general. Besides all of that, there are plenty of rewards to working in this type of system, even though it is very underdeveloped and there still needs to be more research about police social worker. It's police social work and the ability of social workers to impact the criminal justice system. There are plenty of people who have been impacted and will continue being impacted in a positive way. Like this client. I'm not going to read it, but yeah, feel free to read it. It's a really positive story. Overall, the ability to impact police culture, reduce incarceration, and improve community well being is worth everything and more to this field. And there are many diverse populations that could be impacted greatly if police social workers were there to mitigate things and control situations. Just some personal experience. I actually work as a security monitor at my local library, and I've seen the benefits of viewing it in a more of a social work based approach. Just making sure everyone knows that you're around and that you are able to deal with all of the things that come up, like crisis situations, anything like that. Just being a friendly face and having empathy towards patrons is the best that you could do. Thank you so much for watching. I had a very fun time making this presentation, and here are my references.